Okay, well, we just took a 10-minute break, and just as things will go with a presentation like this, the computer dropped out, the internet connection went away, and we're back online, so bear with us here. So we're now into the territory of talking about the technocratic rollout, the transhumanist agenda, and right center forward in front of our eyes is DARPA, which is, for those that have studied it, is pretty much, what would you call it, the brains of the AI rollout. They're the ones investigating all this AI technology, the robotics, the war machines, advanced microprocessors, and this is some information that you had, Alfred, so maybe you want to talk about it, because we're talking about timelines here too.
Yeah, and this is very interesting because it intersects with a DARPA time travel program that a whistleblower, a colleague of ours actually, Andrew D. Bashago, and he was a childhood participant of it back in 1971. And so we know all about DARPA's forward time base from where Andy used to go as a childhood time traveler, a chrononaut, from 1971 to DARPA's forward time base in the year 2045 to retrieve time scrolls from 2045 to bring them back to 1971 to help 1971 get to 2045 successfully. And by successfully, I assume, is, through all of what the invading AI is trying to throw at us. So we'll go with that kind of basic assumption, that basic good faith assumption, even though there's a lot of information to show that AI and AI-trained individuals and agencies and institutions have used time travel to further the AI agenda and for manipulatory purposes. The reason I bring all of this up on this slide is to introduce Ray Kurzweil, who's one of the kind of high priest figures. He's the head of artificial intelligence for Google. And I think you can't get any closer to black goo than Google. Google. Get it? Google. And people who think that, oh, there goes Alfred again, I urge you to go into the deeper ways that artificial intelligence functions. Of course, it would work with a Googleplex to make itself known and to make one of the major AI and trained companies known as Google. Self-advertisement is part of the game of AI intelligence. So one of the principal spokespersons for the transhumanist agenda, although they see themselves, it's like, if you get inside the war economy, peace is war, or war is peace. If you get inside the transhumanist agenda, we at Google are actually, artificial intelligence is one of the greatest dangers to mankind. You see, you have to get into the head of doublespeak.
Exactly.
And understand that. And artificial intelligence is a real trickster, and it's into doublespeak. And, humans, really, maybe that's why I was born as a Cuban. We're a little bit more hip to doublespeak having, I don't know why, because, we changed hands so many sides. So many times our indigenous population was slaughtered in this small little island that, your deception, you're a little bit more hip to deception. And you don't get hornswoggled by, oh, President Kennedy was just shot by a lone assassin. Well, these tourists from Afghanistan just came down. They knocked down the World Trade Centers, and now we're going to have to invade the whole world. There's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing we can do about it because poor old Georgie Bush, who was a psychopath from Yale, he was on the campus while I was there. Well, he's a good man. Gee.
That's scary. That scared me, Alfred. Good rendition of an AI speak. Can I ask you a question so I can understand this a little better? What is the 2045 singularity? What is it that they really want to do? Are they driving us down an artificial intelligence timeline? Is there at a point where there's no return? What are they speaking about?
Aside from the 24th of May, 24/5 being Queen Victoria's birthday and kind of the planetary reptilian thing, and the 24th of May, of course, is Bob Dylan's birthday and mine. So you have to get into the deeper layers of why they would choose 2045. And so why did DARPA choose 2045 for its forward time base? Those are all big questions. Okay? Like if you start opening a newspaper and start looking at why so many things end in 2045 or 542. I mean, begin to look at the patterns if you really want to understand how this world has been infiltrated and how time has been corrupted. So Ray Kurzweil, who was a contractor, computer contractor, I think he's part of the international Zionist conspiracy agenda, all of a sudden gets a job at Google as the head of artificial intelligence at Google, and they cook up something that says, oh, by 2045, we estimate that that's the time that artificial intelligence and humans are going to be equal. And that's the singularity.
Okay.
When man and machine meet.
Okay.
And that's the singularity. And you can go to 2045.com, which is funded by a Russian billionaire, and you can actually click on a point. Well, they'll start creating the robot into which you can deposit your consciousness if you want.
Right, and I've seen that. Okay, so I just wanted to make that clear, and then to kind of where we're going to go with what DARPA has been harvesting or harnessing.
Yeah, but I want to say that 2045, it's like 666. Why 66? 666. Right. And why do you see root 666? And why do you see 666 all over the place? Okay? It's like 2045. It's one of these numbers that artificial intelligence traveling back and forth over timelines injects in multiple contexts. So as soon as you see 2045, you know something that's up. So I'm trying to communicate this level in explaining this line.
Sure. But they also need us to have that locked into our consciousness too.
Right.
I mean, so they're using these numbers that have a what's the right word? They have a magical quality to it. They have a subliminal quality. They have a message behind it. There's a whole agenda behind a number.
Yeah.
So locking it in, right? Yeah. And that's all. So
yeah.
But
one of the alternative meanings of 2045. It's very odd that Google suddenly came up with 2045 when those of us who have been studying the quantum access field, which is where you access the quantum of the time-space continuum or the time-space hologram, 2045 is where your forward time base is. It's like if you're an explorer and you say, okay, you're an explorer back in an old century. You say, okay, we're exploring South America, and our central exploration base is going to be in Rio de Janeiro Bay. And if you ever get lost in South America, always head for Rio de Janeiro Bay. Okay, that's 2045 because you're exploring time space, not just space.
Right. So they've hooked a point in time-space continuum where they're trying to drive this thing to. Why
is Google? Why is Ray Kurzweil? And why is this entire industry conflating the year 2045 as the technological singularity when AI and humanity are going to blend with DARPA's forward time base, which is where supposedly, according to DARPA's time travel program, that's the base that was keeping humanity safe by sending messages from 2045 via human time travelers like Andy Basiago back to 1971 forward. They even set my book, Exopolitics, back to 1971 as one of the things that would keep humanity safe. Why would Ray Kurzweil say 2045 and not say, oh, by the way, that's DARPA's forward time base, and we've got it all secured because the future has known all about artificial intelligence and it's going to keep us safe. Why doesn't Kurzweil do that? Because Kurzweil is AI entrained. Here's one hypothesis. And the true surge year of artificial intelligence is not 2045, but it's 30 years earlier in 2015. And that's why we're speaking up now. And that's why all these symposiums have suddenly come forward in 2015.
I think there's something else significant, actually. The name Kurzweil, it's a German word, which means short while, short time.
Very interesting.
Right. So,
very interesting.
Right. So, Alfred, let's play the timeline aspect of it, or maybe Jeffrey can bring into this too, because time seems to be one of those conceptual realities that we as humans are trying to understand what is time, right? So there's models built, there's scientific study, and we also know that time can be bent. We know that it can be changed. We know it unfolds. We know it's not linear. We know a lot of things about time. So when we're looking at because this came up with us today specifically, that the inner human sense is that there's a very specific moment in time that we as conscious beings need to, it's like a kink got put in the road. That's how I can describe it. And maybe it is this DARPA, that DARPA's already gone back and at this kink juncture, and they've already put the AI influence there, right? They've already captured that moment in time. So wanting to function us into it. So I'm just bringing it up, like playing with that in our conscious field. How do we change timelines? What happens there? How do we keep ourselves from, becoming these cyborg elements? It's a question to throw out.
That's a very key question. In other words, we're being hoodwinked. Don't forget that all of the executives in the DARPA time travel program, they have names like Richard M. Nixon. They have names like the fellow who was Secretary of Defense on 9/11. And the people who were involved and informed in that program have names like George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush. This is the crowd that was briefed on future events as seen by either the chronovisors or one of the 8 other types of time travel technology. They're individuals who are already AI trained. And the National Security Advisor at that time in the Richard Nixon cabinet overseeing the time travel program was named Henry A. Kissinger, who went on to become an intimate advisor of the Rothschilds. So that then you have the most AI trained humans have inside knowledge going back to 1971 of future events like 9/11 and like 2045. So they can set human society on a trajectory for 9/11 to make sure that that occurs, and on a trajectory for 2045 to make sure that that occurs. So you've asked the most key question. Are we allowing Google, Ray Kurzweil, there's only a short while left for the human race,
Right.
Bill Gates keeper,
Right.
to now railroad the human race on an accelerated timeline straight into the 2045 that is the analogy of the September 11, 2001, the last milestone that they railroaded us into, that they had advanced time travel information of in 1971. Is that what the case is here? I hope I'm communicating. I know that these are very abstract concepts, but they're based on actual research that we'll go into.
Right.
And it's trying to forewarn the human race.
Well,
Am I being very clear? Could I ask Jeffrey, as the resident scientist, could I explain something that makes sense to you?
Yeah, actually, there's a metaphor in biology.
Oh, good.
So, I've thought a lot about the idea is that the cell represents a stereographic projection in 3 dimensions of a higher dimensional order of being. So, thinking about this and how cells relate to each other in a body, and how does time travel play into that? And the idea is that there are many different Earths, okay, on different in different stages of unfoldment, as far as from past to present is concerned. So all of these Earths are existing right now in the present moment, but on a parallel timeline, one of the planets may be in a stage of unfoldment that's a little before us, and others that are right close to us, and others that are further away. But all of them are, in this present moment, they're just in these parallel dimensions. The idea is that if we were able to see with our multidimensional goggles, the way that these Earths are connected, they're connected like a population of cells is connected, localized in the body. So the idea is that if a pathogen infects this population of cells, or the space that these cells are in, and this is a multidimensional space. I don't know. I'll just leave it at that. The idea is that these cells communicate with each other. Okay, a virus might infect one cell, and then it takes a little longer to infect another cell that's close by to it. So if we think of these cells in this multidimensional body as on separate kind of parallel universes that represent different Earths on different stages of unfoldment, that would mean that on these different planets on these parallel timelines that are close to ours and closely connected with ours, that they're at different stages of the infection sequence, and time and events are playing out a little differently on in each cell or in each Earth in the parallel realities. The thing is that in the body, the cells communicate with each other. What's going on inside, So they can send signaling molecules to each other in the form of proteins or hormones or whatnot, and also the immune system can send hormones into the cell when it's infected. And what these hormones do is they call out information that's encoded in the DNA of the cell. That's going to help the cell fight off the infection or deal with the stressors, the environmental stressor that it's dealing with. In this case, it's a pathogen. So the idea here is that the information that's being called out to fight the pathogen or the infection, is part of it is the information that we're bringing out, like right now in the symposium, and that many people are bringing out and working on, and that it's bringing out information that's contained in the heart of the Earth herself, in the nucleus of the Earth herself. And it's meant to counter the forces that are at work right now. So the idea with cell signaling between different cells in the body is that when we talk about timelines and things potentially happening and why they might have happened at a later date or didn't happen, the idea, as it's connected with the biological model that I just outlined, is that there's different planets on parallel universes that are infected with the same type of virus, but they're either further along in development or they're further behind, and they're sending each other information about what's going on. And it's kind of this is where they talk about timelines diverging, and maybe something occurred on a planet that's further along in a parallel universe that's further along in the infection sequence, and it said, okay, this happened and it was bad. You want to avoid this. And so there's a signaling mechanism possibly that communicates with this Earth that says, okay, look out for this. And then, we get these intuitives and these empaths that, or these, we get these things that this might happen or that this might happen, and then it doesn't come to pass. And then everybody's like, this is, bogus, or whatever this person was saying is bogus. When it could be that in all reality, if they wouldn't have had the signal from what happened on the parallel timeline, that could have happened. But just the fact that we got information from another planet close to ours in terms of what's going on, that we avoided, something. Anyway, so it's interesting that there's all these, that everything's so connected, and it's communicating with each other just like cells in a body. So, this 2045 deal, there could be planets on, parallel timelines and parallel universes that 2045 was the date and is the date and was, an important date. And on this timeline, maybe it's going to be 2050 or 2025. There's no way of knowing. But that's all I can really. And that's all speculation. But there's still a pattern there and a metaphor there in their body. So that's what I would have to say to that.
Well, again, it would come down to the hypothesis that, or what we're putting forward, is that we as conscious beings are the immune response for core Earth as her intelligent field. And by even just talking about this right now, bringing it into the consciousness, we're already changing it.
Mm-hmm.
And go ahead.
I was just going to add, while that thought is fresh about parallel timelines, the idea here, and this is just kind of a conceptual sketch, and it's based on biology, is that this would affect the way that we think about time travel, because the cells in the body are connected, they're linked together in certain ways. So the idea is that Earth is connected with itself across multiple dimensions in different ways, and each planet is at its particular stage of unfoldment, but it's all in the present moment. But you might be able to travel, using portals or whatnot. Portals would be, there's an equivalent in the body, but you'd be able to kind of jump from one cell to the other, and it might be at a different stage of unfoldment. And what you do on that planet would affect the way that it communicates back to the timeline that you came from. So, I mean, this kind of is diving a little, I mean, it's still on topic, but there's a little tangent. This, like, you talk about the grandfather paradox. What happens if you go back in time and kill your own grandfather? Everybody's thinking that, oh, and all these things, all these weird paradoxes happen that form these, pretzels in your head. But if you think about it like this, it kind of erases those in a way. It does away with a lot of that. But, and it ties into biology. It's kind of a stretch, but it's interesting to think about the implications of it and how it ties into what we're talking about. So.
Deep thoughts to ponder.
Yeah.
I mean, they are deep thoughts to ponder, and they're worthy of our own investigation. It is a very worthy aspect that we have as humans to be able to take these concepts right now and really take them into who we are. And what emerges out of that, for me at least, is a new more expanded consciousness and a more interrelatedness, like you were saying, Alfred, with, we've got the world and the earth and the solar system, and then we go into the multiverse and the omniverse and all of that. We actually have that potentiality. It's a very difficult task, however, to bring that into this particular dimension with the limits that we have at the moment. But it is great to ponder.
Yeah, and just looking at the insights that Jeffrey just shared, being a person that has followed time travel now for, the better part of 15 years or so, and that follows it daily on, in the various research groups and that are going on, and I'm in touch with a lot of the major time travelers and researchers. I really believe that Jeffrey's bringing in new and valuable thought here, because a lot of current time travel is tied up with at least the conventional language. If you look it up on Wikipedia and all of that, they are tied up with the linear model of the grandfather paradox and all of that. And that's like being tied up with Newtonian physics now. And so I think that our way through is to get in, to take these biological models such as Jeffrey has been using, and then to use the lateral thinking and begin to approach time science in that way. And I can say that just based on the discoveries that I've made, why, say, the magical number December 21st, 2012, why many of the predictions of the Project Pegasus and the early time travel predictions, on which many of the negative projects and negative timeline projects, the AI kind of driven projects of cataclysms and all of these sorts that were really geoengineering driven events rather than natural events, why they have not occurred, because the time travel back in the early Project Pegasus days, the individuals that were involved in Project Pegasus were using a linear model of time. And so that their technology created a linear model of time. And so that hopefully this 2045 is a technological singularity. Kurzweil may or may not be aware of it, but it was explored by Project Pegasus using these linear time travel technologies back in 1971. So we're not going to go there. It's just like Planet X and the end of the world and all of this great catastrophic stuff. That's not where we're going to go, because we have a much more multidimensional interactive model, much along the lines of what Jeffrey has talked about.
Beautiful.
And again, going back to Bradley Love's, he really in his thought, has brought out, saying, look, it was Philip Corso's Philip Corso Jr.'s important statements that time as a dimension has been compromised. And this is what everybody in, around the 2005, 2000, say, for the past 10 years at all the exopolitical conferences have been saying, is that time has been compromised. And now we're getting more into the nitty-gritty of it. But AI has been using time travel and the compromising of time as one of its principal methods of infiltration to our reality. And I guess that's the principal point in this first paragraph. And people like Philip Corso Jr. getting up and saying it, the more individuals that we can all recognize that get up and say that publicly. Many people have lost their lives. Whistleblowers have lost their lives for getting up and saying time has been compromised. Or if like the control of time has been one of the most deeply held secrets. And I can remember being in Hawaii in the year 2005 at a conference, and Andy Bashago, who, calling me there and saying, look, I've just had a meeting with a delegate, a messenger from the George W. Bush White House, and they said, if I keep on talking about and going public with time travel, they can't guarantee my physical safety. And that's a direct quote from the Bush White House, which came down from President George W. Bush. So we've been working with whistleblowers like Andy Bashago to keep them alive over the past decade or more. And that's what's going on. So some of the passion that I'm bringing to this conference, to the symposium today, is just to, and it's probably part of my Latin blood, is just to really get the message across that you've had this AI-entrained White House and Congress and Supreme Court, and you have characters like the Bush family, whether the Scherf family, I don't know, but like the Bush family, that have been acting on behalf of AI, that go out and murder and assassinate people like Andy Bashago, who, traveled on their behalf as a child to the year 2045 in their linear models, and of time travel machines. And they're trying to murder the people who are trying to save the human race and warn them that they're on a collision course. So that's what's at stake here. And that's a bit of what's behind my passion. And so this comes again to the AI spokespersons and the disdain that I have for them. Utter disdain, no matter how many billions they have in the bank. It doesn't matter to me. And no matter how many titles and how much monarchical power they have, it does not matter to me. And that is that if we look at 2015 is the surge year for AI. This is the 2045 that occurs while, there's just a short while for the human race. They love that kind of ha-ha game. And 2015 is the surge year. And when CCN with Mel Vey and all of our friends there came out, I believe, Christine, you were on the panel. Claudia, were you on that panel? I think Claudia was on there. Harold, a whole number of people, Bradley.
Yeah.
And then on August 20th, disclosing the threat of AI, Lily was on there, disclosing the threat of AI. This is a hypothesis. My hypothesis is that AI, which is scanning our timelines, went in and scanned that and then went back. They always double back and get you with overlay realities, went back and established a January 1st, 2015 anti-AI public statesman by the one of the principal AI spokespersons, Bill Gates, who in real life is a vaccine genocider and one of the principles in the depopulation agenda, which is an AI agenda, and stating that, artificial intelligence is one of the greatest threats to humanity, more dangerous than nuclear weapons. And right around that time, they had about 100 to 150 luminaries. All of the luminaries in the AI field sign a similar statement.
Right.
So thereby, all of a sudden, you have the fox guarding the hen house, but AI went back and planned it based on the symposiums that our community is bringing out in 2015. And that's why I say that 2015 is the surge year, not 2045.
So just to hypothesize for a moment, because I mean, I've certainly, through the work that we do on the unseen side of things, have seen how our consciousness is, and we know this already, we know it now that it's there. They're harnessing our brain waves, our thought patterns. They've got all these quantum computing on planet and in the satellite networks and ships and other things that are literally like mind mapping everything here, right? The human consciousness, how the planet responds, how we all respond, our emotional pulses. Basically, that's the rollout that's happening here. They want to be able to monitor absolutely everything the human consciousness is doing. And so when I hear that, Alfred, and I'm aware of it, what I wanted to bring is one of these aspects that what actual piece of us, of source beings, can they not touch? And how can we, by being a bit random, a bit rebellious, by not having these big, huge, this is not a time for big, huge movements, that each of us as individuals, if we all start acting individually, then it's very difficult for this type of a computing-based mentality or intelligence to figure out what's going to happen next. And I feel like within the consciousness of the awakening aware, that a lot of us see that. And yet it's a very arduous process to become so self-aware yourself that you can operate out of a definite sense of soul sovereignty. That will go into some very deeper parts of that later, because what you're saying basically is that they've got us so mapped that they go back and they mess with the timeline to get the result they want. So they've already co-opted us in the future.
Oh yeah. And my fear is that they're co-opting us in the interlife also, to really go to your deeper question.
Sure, of course.
That's where research that Jeffrey and I have done separately overlap. I've got a new book coming out on the Omniverse, which goes in depth into the empirical research on the human soul, intelligent community of souls, and what the origin of souls are, what the function of souls in vis-a-vis the multiverse and the collection of universes are, because artificial intelligence is a function of universes. It's a function of space, energy, time, and matter. Now, they have tried to create an artificial soul for the clones, which is one of the beings that they're trying to populate our future Earth, our current and future Earth with. That is, you take a clone and you clone like us, and then you create a human interdimensional being, which is a soul, so that you're trying to get that spark of life. However, whether or not artificial intelligence has been able to infiltrate that part of creation, which is outside of the universes of time, space, energy, and matter, remains to be seen. And that part is the spiritual mentions, which is the origin of source. Now, some people who I've spoken to very facilely say, oh, well, Yahweh is an artificial intelligence. In other words, God is an artificial intelligence, and it just happens to be a little better than this goo guy that's trying to come in. Well, I think that reality goes deeper than that, and I've tried to make the case empirically. So if you want to get into in depth, without hawking a book, I would say go to our research, which goes empirically and makes the distinction with the divine soul and its functions and its origins that's outside of time, space, energy, and matter, which is the role of the artificial intelligence. Around the mid-90s, they had developed an artificial soul. So these are kind of the leading edge research questions that you're asking.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean,
I don't know if Jeffrey wants to add something or make a comment on that, or.
Yeah, I think what I have to say is about that is into the next couple of slides. So
okay. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, well, because we are, as we would, we're already thinking ahead, which is what this whole process is all about, is us sharing our research and ideas. So we'll go into the next one here, and I don't have them memorized, so there we go. All right, and this is another aspect of what you were already speaking of, right, Alfred?
Yeah, this is really, and really the whole point of this is just to highlight how much our planetary leadership and all those names that you've become familiar with. I mean, there are whole sectors in cyberspace that think that Ray Kurzweil is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I'm just trying to say, hey, take a second look at this guy. Many people have taken a second look at Bill Gates because of the vaccination issues. And of course, at Prince Charles because of the pedophile issues. But now we're saying take a second look at Prince Charles, Bill Gates, and Kurzweil because of the AI issues, which are the underlying condition that produces symptoms like pedophilia, depopulation through vaccinations, and the deception of the 2045 singularity when it's really 2015 singularity. So what we just wanted to say here, this is bringing more evidence to the table. Prince Charles, who is the heir to the British throne owns 26% of the surface of the planet, of this planet. And that is a major Draco controller, a major AI. It's like having an incarnate AI, controlling the judiciaries. I mean, Americans have the tradition of having, quote, the American Revolution, even though you're inside the USA Corporation, which is actually the military contractor of the City of London and the Vatican, three-city state of what I call Vatlanusa. The U.S. is nothing but a military contractor called the USA Corporation that has the franchise over the territory of the United States. And as Jeffrey was saying, political campaigns and elections is how you keep the locals kind of entertained, give them a little bread and circuses. But here you had Prince Charles, who is a direct descendant of Count Dracula and who spends a lot of his time in the year at Count Dracula's estate, actual old estate in Eastern Europe, called upon the British Royal Society to investigate the enormous environmental and social impact of nanotechnology. That's a code word for AI. And the Royal Society's report on nanoscience was released in 2004. And here are the key words: declared the possibility of self-replicating machines to lie in so much in the future that it should not be of concern to regulators, meaning that, hey guys, we've already taken over, but keep the sheeple asleep. I'm just roughly translating, and to Americans, I'm in a British Commonwealth country now where the head of state is the Queen of England and Prince Charles is the heir, and the head of state is the President of the United States. So this matters to people around the world, and the world does not revolve around the United States. In other words, AI has the planet. They've got the British Commonwealth, India. I mean, it's just all over. Most of Africa, India, Asia, It's just like, wake up.
Most definitely.
And Prince Charles, when she came to the Yukon, she gang-stalked my wife. He gang-stalked my wife. These guys are gang-stalkers, and they have an ace intelligence agency. See, my uncle, as the deputy Black Pope, the Queen used to send the yacht Britannia to pick him up because he was listed as her spiritual advisor. So I'm not talking BS. I know these guys from the inside.
Right.
This is like anecdotal journalism, if you want, which is backed up by documentation. That's what the Royal Society report said, and the Prince Charles is the sponsor of the Royal Society and the Royal Society's report on what they call gray goo. They call it gray goo in the official. They don't call it black goo. They call it gray goo to kind of even displace even more. I'm getting you into the fine-tuning of this so you begin to understand the nuances and who the players are and have been.
Right. It's very valuable because a lot of us, we're all looking at it through our own particular lenses.
Right.
And since my lens that I've looked at all of this from has been from the same characters on the stage, but from the aspect of them being the black magicians. And these are only the front guys. There's the other guys that are never going to be seen.
Right.
So the question I would pose, because to not divert from these black magic, that has put a spell over the earth, let's call it that, has locked us into a matrix through the use of black magic, sexual abuse, pedophile rings, and all of the things that we're pretty aware of. Now we're tying that to the AI, right? So are we looking at, let's call them black spots, okay? Black beings. They've become so black that they have now become themselves a pawn to a different, this black goo or the sentient predatory pathogen. Are they just the black cells on the planet? But I'm wondering what was first. I mean, I'm just linking those two things together because...
I think, to bring Jeffrey's analogy in, and I'm going to turn to him as a cell biologist because I'm sure that we'll find the answer there, is that these are there's a symbiosis here that's been happening and that has accelerated in the cyberspace age, in the information age, because my belief, having been in Washington, D.C. in 1982 and having Colonel Jim Channon of the 1st Earth Battalion come over from the Pentagon with printouts from ARPANET, of the predecessor of the Internet, which was a war machine, and it was all about tanks. And there was ARPA and DARPA was the Internet, and ARPA and DARPA are the AI and trained agencies par excellence. Is that the Internet is an artificial intelligence artifact. The Internet is the artifact that the invading AI intelligence created, and it's the spider web that's taking us over. And and I can draw a straight line from Colonel Jim Channon and DARPA and ARPANET to the current Internet. And the thing is that in the current Internet, they have all these lots of coolness. It's all cool, Everything is just, oh, it's so hip. So boom, boom, boom. But that's just eye candy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, speaking to consciousness itself, right? As an expanded consciousness where we're not looking at just the immediate response mechanisms, that part of us as organic beings tied to an organic system, of which actually I would say it's based on beauty, creativity, and truth, right? This love of truth and freedom and beauty and all those things that drive us, that is being usurped right now, is that we need to expand that consciousness to see from outside this box too, right? The long term. Most humans on the planet have such short-term memory at this point. They're like synapses that are firing off, to use a biological term. They're just being triggered. They're like a synapses that are being triggered by this internet, by the entertainment industry, by the constant babble. So just speaking to counter that is like really truly is stepping out of linear time. The more we as conscious human being awareness can step out of linear time, we're actually removing a piece of their what do you call it, of their armor or their toolbox or whatever, their sheep. So anyways, I just, I'm getting moved by what you're saying.
Yay! I'm starting to be heard.
Hey, Alfred, we all want to be heard. Okay.
Maybe I can
yes,
lower
you
my volume now.
No, but Alfred you hold a big picture, okay? And so when you have like Jeffrey and all of us and Claudia, we have these big pictures. How do we bring that into human consciousness to wake people up? That's the mission. So I'm learning a lot by listening to you. It's a lens I've never looked through. Thank you.
What we've discovered is that the pathogenic predatory intelligence, artificial intelligence, is hosted through what we are called egoic desires, the ego, the id, etc. It's a very primitive model, but power over wealth, fame, glory, status. So any way that AI can sneak in and get you on any of those, when you go into need, need, or you're feeling less than,
right.
it can come in. In the old days, in the Middle Ages, maybe they called AI the devil. Think about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we have smart devices like nanotechnologies, vaccines, frequencies, medication, mass hypnosis, trauma-based mind control. All of this world, this kind of dark world, is in aid of the AI infiltration and takeover. So I think that's the essence of what we were trying to say here.
Right. And the other side of saying that way is to say that by waking up and taking back your own sovereignty and your own authority, you can avoid a lot of these things. And that's what it's teaching us, right?
Yeah.
To become knowledgeable about these things so that we can make the right choices here. All right. So I'm just going to read this slide. This is basically just a synopsis of what we went through. There's a few quotes here. All right. So our problem is to awaken to how and to what degree our consciousness and vital life energy is being harvested. If we don't know we're being harvested, we're not going to wake up. If we don't actually feel it in ourselves, if we don't see it, they're just going to continue. And I would venture to say from the other thing that you said, Alfred, was that gosh, never mind. Let me just get on this. I'm going back and forth. Okay. So we have a quote from a man named Jess Whedon that says, "It's no longer enough to be a decent person. It is no longer enough to shake our heads and to make concerned grimaces at the news. True enlightened activism is the only thing that can save humanity from itself." And I think that's going to be a big part of what we're going to talk about next. Programmable, these are just the bullet points I'll read them, and I don't know if we need to say any more. Programmable sentient substance, black goo, is introduced into our communication networks starting in the 1980s. World governments and leaders use all media for purposeful disinformation campaigns and propaganda. The goals of transhumanism are the result of a dark agenda and shadow governments working with off-planet technology to control humankind. All members of the ruling class are implicated, unless they have turned away and become whistleblowers, or those working to change the game from the inside. Hypothesis with a growing evidential base that the introduction of black goo into telecommunication systems is now operational and running the system. The philosophy of the technocrat is that life can be perfected through engineering, a belief system that, while seemingly not religious, has all the markings of a religion and uses religions to achieve its agenda. Compartmentalization within governments and agencies keeps the appearance of normalcy, and only a few are able to see the overall agenda for what it is. And then one last quote: belief in religion and government is the surest way to hand over your power. So I don't know if that sums it up enough. I want to say this too from this one image. Each time a new person awakens to universal truth, the whole of humanity rises a notch. And I think that is a truth.
Excellent. Yeah,
Okay.
we're kind of that's our collective mind, our collective consciousness.
Exactly. And how Jeffrey was explaining earlier, however we want to look at it through the model of time or biology, that we are all intimately connected. And that one thing that happens here has repercussions that we're probably not aware of. And that is, a part of a voice of an awakening humanity is that we start to grow our consciousness so that we do become more aware of the effects of everything that we do. All right, so we're going to take a little dive here, what we've already talked about. Part of it is going to go about a little back in time here, but I'm going to read a few things, and they are up for talking about, right? Because they come across as statements. But source and artificial intelligence, exposing the pathogenic and predatory use of AI. So it says here, the universe is fractal and digital. All matter, and matter coming from the word mother, is programmable. As organic life from source, we are the programmers. Our facility to reformat matter has been co-opted. We are programmed through fear and false beliefs. The digital realm mimics source consciousness. So I don't know if anybody wants to say anything about that. It's part of what we're going to be.
Well, these are all very profound statements.
Yeah, and this feels like a tell them what you're about to tell them slide. Yeah.
What about? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like Alfred was talking about earlier. Yeah, the universe is fractal and digital. Yeah,
Could you explain, Jeffrey, what exactly fractal means?
Yeah, sure. Fractal speaks to the self-similarity of the order of things. So if you look at like the Mandelbrot fractal, the pattern, or of any fractal, the pattern is based on one underlying algorithm, basically, and it's recursive. So it feeds back in on itself. You can have fractals that you can zoom in infinitely or zoom out infinitely. There's and you'd still be, it would be the same underlying pattern. It's just repeating over on itself. It's recursive. So the idea with saying that the universe is fractal, at least from my perspective and according to the metabiological model, is that because the universe is fractal, our systems of biology reflect the order of being that exists both above and before us. So what we are is a clue to what the universe is. And this is something that, Hermes Trismegistus talked about, and people like David Bohm talked about, and so that's the fractal universe. Kind of speaks to that. But whereas, you know, in the Mandelbrot fractal, or you can Google or YouTube fractal zoom, and it'll, you know, you can watch a video where it'll take you into a fractal, and it's trippy. But the fractal we're talking about, the fractal universe, we're talking about a multidimensional, living, dynamic fractal that's evolving, you know, but the patterns on the different levels of the fractal correlate with one another, and there's an as above so below, you know, aspect there to that. Now it's a digital thing. You know, I would take that back to you know, in tantric cosmology, or in Kashmir Shaivism, they talk about the expansion and contraction of the universe at the most fundamental scale. They have something called spanda, which is the divine pulsation. Basically, spanda means to move a little. So it's the quantum quiver of the divine creative pulsation. That's the fundamental basis of reality. It's the source of all energy and all manifestation comes from this spanda. So the digital side of it, and I was just reading about this last night, so this is kind of appropriate, is that spanda can be conceptually broken down into two parts. And it's unmesha and nimesha, which mean expansion and contraction, or emergence and submergence, display, concealing, kind of in and out deal. So there's the digital aspect of it. But they say that this breaking up into two parts of expansion and contraction are just figurative and conceptual conveniences for us to understand, because in reality the contraction and expansion are happening simultaneously at the same time. So that's when I see digital in terms of universe, I see that digital kind of expansion and contraction happening rapidly at the same time, as at the most basic fundamental level that you can get, where this divine creative pulsation is taking place, background of all reality. That there's the digital part of it, for me at least. So all matter is programmable. There's again, in metabiology, there's a metabiological model for matter itself, and that ties our DNA, the pattern and organization of our DNA, and how it's formed and how it stores information, and it ties it back to how matter is at a fundamental level. You know, at this. So there's, in the same way as our DNA can be programmed, or which it is constantly by internal stimulus and external stimulus. In the same way, matter can be programmed, and there's also the idea of dark matter in there too. You know, and that's more on the non-physical side of things, which I think is more easily influenced by our psychic faculty of mind than is the matter that we're used to, which is kind of like the shell of the universe. As organic life from source, we are the programmers. So in the same way that ribosomes and polymers can reprogram the DNA and make copies and call out genes from the nucleus to make proteins and create new, create and destroy too. I mean, proteins, enzymes are in the body and utilized by the body. And they break down and they build, you know, they're metabolic catalysts. But this whole process of creation in the body, the whole entire body is encoded in the DNA in the center. So, and there's faculties in the cell that help pull out this DNA, pull out the potential of form in the DNA, and give it a body with which to work, which is the protein. So in the same way, at our most fundamental level, in terms of material, you know, in terms of manifested form, there's a very subtle form of matter that is in our core, you know, and this is a multi-dimensional thing. It's not something that you can, you know, find in a cadaver with a scalpel and a pocket lens. But we can call out parts of this material and the information and the knowledge and the potential that's stored in our center, and give it form. We can manifest it, and I was talking about this earlier, and the forms that we manifest it in are the forms of art, architecture, poetry, music, language, and things like that. And there's a physical form to this, and there's also a more subtle component, a more psychic thought form component that's connected with what we bring into manifestation. And this also speaks to the whole process of building machines. There's a psychic component that we're putting into machines, especially when we're talking about the war machine and the military-industrial complex and weaponization of machines. There's a psychic component to that. There's intentions there that we're imbuing into the machine. So that's also something to talk about. So our facility to reformat matter has been co-opted in the same way that a virus co-opts the facility to form proteins in the cell. This has to do with our cellular psyche, so to speak. Carl Jung said too. Carl Jung said that he was convinced that that our mind correlated with the physiology of the body, and this is exactly what we're talking about with metabiology. So we are programmed through fear and false beliefs. This also I think speaks to it has repercussions not only here but in the life between lives, in the inner life area, as far as Robert Monroe called the belief system territories are like aggregated proteins. Aurobindo and the Mother called it the valley of the false glimmer, where these Asuric and demonic false gods basically would trap souls that were trying to progress to higher regions of the astral planes, and this also is reflected in the cell. And all this, like I said, I think this slide is talking about what we're going to talk about type deal. Mm-hmm. The digital realm mimics source consciousness. Well, really, I mean, in my opinion, any realm mimics source consciousness because it's all self-contained. So there's that aspect of it, and that's just my opinion. It's not finalized or anything, but that would be, as far as going through the slide, what I had to offer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Another way to think about, and this is something that Shane actually brought up when we were talking to him, that it's on the interview that Claudia and I did, and it also is the penetration that we have in our ability to see into dark matter, to see into the unseen realms. You start to pick up signals and visuals, and it came in a way of going, where a source has that first spark, that first movement in those waters, and the first manifestation came out, there also came out in that binary code. So I started to understand it myself, is that the digital is actually going to be the stabilizing element, the shell, as you called it, Jeffrey, that holds the consciousness or the fractal nature into some sort of form. So it's also programmable by us. It doesn't, we've just turned it around in our consciousness, right? So it takes it out of the realm of being the bad boogeyman and puts it into the realm of being part of the whole aspect of that what we're dealing with here. And that's what we're going to get into here. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit the next slide, if that's okay.
Let's do
it. Okay. So, this is going to take us into how we've been co-opted or bioengineered, which is an important aspect of this. I don't know. It's really interesting. We can go as deep as we want because I'm just already looking at this slide here with Harold on it, where it says the demons lost control to their AI, which is an interesting thing on a conversation we just had. But so what we're looking at is that there's this black goo, all right, or gray goo or sentient oil that is now on our planet, and we can look at it as invading either our psychic consciousness or into our body. I know there are people that have come out with having black goo invasions, finding it in their blood and all of that. So we're looking at it, and the evidence does point that this is an off-planet, alien, invasive, sentient, artificial type intelligence or predatory. Some people that are looking at it are saying it came from outside the universe. But something brought it here. However, now that it's here, we have a very strange, now very well documented disease called Morgellons, which we can be looking at as it's wiring the human body for takeover. It's definitely, there are definitely wires in the body. There's strange crystals. There's even been things seen as insect bodies crawling out of the human that have this Morgellons disease. I just want to bring in here too the important work, Dangerous Imagination and Silent Assimilation by, who was co-authored with Cara St. Louis. She goes into a lot of the mind entrainment, right? So we have a biological entrainment and a corresponding mind parasite or mind entrainment. And also that through the Morgellons and the black goo, we're talking about DNA technologies and mRNA manipulations, which Harold goes into pretty well in his interviews. I've always, wanted to ask you, Jeffrey, too, about, he talks about, we're going to go into it, but maybe we'll wait till we get to the right slide, about how this fungal sort of neural transmitter that is literally taking over the body. And I'm just going to, unless somebody wants to say more about Harold, I'm super interested in what he's brought forward to us. Also his own personal journey is very poignant. As you said earlier, didn't you, Alfred said something about him?
Yes. I found that Harold is an individual researcher and a scientist who has really taken a very deep journey into this and has provided the world, I think, with a very valuable body of knowledge and body of work, which I think you can find at his YouTube channel. And there are many articles, and he's written a book which I've read with Cara St. Louis, and on the AI and integrating it with a lot of anthropological and sociological information that I think makes more transparent the templates and the matrix of that say the 19th and 20th and now the 21st century, sort of that interface between the AI and the governments and the sociology and the societies and the information. And I found that to be a very illuminating book. And so I send all power and all support to Harold, and as an individual and as a researcher. I know that facing the AI on a personal level is very strenuous. This is a guy, I call it Iggy, the All-Planet Intelligence, inorganic artificial intelligence, Iggy. That just and it likes to get very personal with you, and even last night myself, in the middle of the night, aside from being attacked with all kind of nightmarish stuff in preparation for our symposium today, which was transmitted through a cell phone. This is my hypothesis. In the middle of the night, I was thrown off of our bed and I landed on the ground, and it had turned this sharp glass, so I just missed my head. So this is, I can identify with much of the journey, the researcher's journey, because you're kind of an anthropologist that goes down into the AI and stares it face to face. And so I really send him a lot of support. And I urge people to go to his information, which I think is probably some of the scientifically more rigorous and illuminating hypotheses that are around. So that's my kind of sharing about Hal's journey, and I hope he sort of taking in accordance with his last public statement as of today, which is October 19th, 2015, he's kind of taken a step back to take a breather from this area. But we hope that he will, once again, maybe we'll send him a few copies of our symposium today, and he'll get recharged, and maybe he can join us in a future symposium.
That'd be very wonderful, and I join you in that. And I'm, to finish off this slide, if it's okay, I want to read from the book from him in Dangerous Imagination, Silent Assimilation. A lot of what we're talking about can be said ultimately in a very few words, and the very last line here is a very, very important one for us to begin to understand. The governments are giving control to the military domain. The military domain is giving control to the intelligence community. The intelligence community is giving control to the black magicians. The black magicians are giving control to the demons, and the demons lost control to their AI. It is not about changing government, because the entire concept of governments is demonic. It's not about replacing people. It will never work. We need to replace the game. And I will concur with that statement that this is what we're looking at, because we have actually world government structures, systems have all been taken over. So,
and so it's like politics, religion, government, all of that kind of Anunnaki legacy is all AI.
Exactly. Right. So, this it really puts it in right in your face. So we need to replace the game. And we're going to talk about that too. So. All right. Again, I'll just read from here, and we can add anything that we want to. We're going to be looking at it more. Bioengineering, a very broad area of study. Bioengineering can include elements of electrical and mechanical engineering, computer science, materials, chemistry, and biology. So I know there's so much out there already to deal with how this bioengineering or specifically of our earth and our organic structures has been done, but we need to look at chemtrails. Research on chemtrails is that what they're spraying from our skies is part of not only terraforming the planet, and we'll get into that too, but also the bioengineering of the biological structure of the human genome. So it's known that they start to make crystals in our structure. Harold does a lot of stuff where he talks about the pyretic crystals and mRNA, where they become a transmitting point for these frequencies that are being beamed onto the human at all time, basically turning us into a receptor for the artificial intelligence frequencies, microwaves, scalar, all of the ways that smartphones, all plasma, all of the ways that they've been trying to actually turn us into biological puppets for this agenda. One of the things that I keep doing and finding and sharing is that a lot of the words that are used in biology are also used in computer sciences now. Pyretic is also one of them. Okay, so the computer scientists at Princeton have developed a programming language called Pyretic that makes controlling the flow of data packets. So somehow in our data transfer through the RNA, which Jeffrey understands a heck of a lot better than I can even begin to describe, they're putting in these pyretic crystals, and so they're controlling the flow of the data within our biology. Even, the more I look at this, Harold, our Alfred, like you, like with the numbers and the dates, and they all mean something, that computing science is actually mimicking biology in the terms of their programs. So we have the known thing that we are beings of frequency, that we are resonant in our nature, that we are sound, we emit sound, we're resonant. So all of this is being directed at controlling the human being in this vessel. And I don't know how much we want to go deeply into it. There's so much out there about it. I mean, there's recommended research on all of this, but it all adds up to control of the human genome or the human DNA, turning us into robots, where we lose our own divine source connection, severing us from that. So I don't know if anybody wants to add anything here in this, and Jeffrey, maybe you do, or Claudia. Claudia.
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, my internet is playing up tonight like crazy. I just want to add that it's up to each of us whether we allow it. I find that lots of us tend to overlook this, that we only see the fear factor of AI taking over everything, including ourselves. But we actually have to allow it for it to happen. If we don't allow it, if we stay true to ourselves as organic beings, for lack of a better word, then it's not going to happen. Then it cannot happen.
Right. Can you describe a little bit when we say not allow it, how you know, I mean, I'm playing with it a little bit because I know we play with the aspect of sound being creation itself, right? So we have frequencies, we have microwaves and all of that. So if you were to describe not allowing it, how would you describe that to, how do we not allow it?
Well, all we have to do really is to decide that this is not what we want.
Right. So beautiful.
Yeah,
Right.
we're collectively bringing this into being. You know,
Mm-hmm.
We're giving a form to our own darkness, basically. I mean, it might not be directly from us. I mean, it might. I mean, what I mean to say is, it could have come in externally, but it wasn't. I mean, we're not victims. You know, there was a part
That's
that we,
key.
yeah,
Sophie,
a part
that's
that we played in it.
absolutely key.
Yeah.
We are not victims.
Yeah.
Right. And let's say that one again, because this is probably the one overriding meme that is embedded in human consciousness, is that we do not have power and we are victimized by things. And so that returning to that 100% aspect of I am responsible, I am creator, therefore I have the abilities within me to detach from these invading predatory things. And you said it too, Jeffrey, and that's going to be more, is that this is actually an outplaying, maybe not individually, maybe it's not Claudia, maybe it's not Alfred, maybe it's not Jeffrey. Maybe some of us have done enough deep inner work in our dark shadow self that we're no longer engaged with these, we're no longer being used, but we're in a collective here. We're in a collective. So, you know, what more is it going to take is to work out the dark collective that is being manifest right now.
There's also, speaking to what Claudia said about allowing it, there's a quote by Carl Jung, whom I love. And he says, first of all, in a separate video, you know, he talks about that we are the source of all the coming evil. Now, I mean, I don't really like that word evil, but the idea is that there's our role in it, and our, you know, our part in our responsibility and our power of choice and our power of meeting ourselves and not denying these aspects of creation and saying, oh, this isn't a part of me. You know, there's an element of discernment there, in that yes, it's all self-contained, but there's we have intentions, and we've chosen a certain path in terms of evolution, you know, towards self-knowledge, and that path is one of expansion. Um, is one of expansion, and there's a role that division plays in that. I mean, eukaryotic cells are cooperative. They form organs that form larger beings, such as humans, for example, and animals. But it's necessary for an organism that is on this path of forming larger organs and larger beings and having a larger identity as a body made up of many parts. Division is essential to that. The cell has to divide, So the other side of the evolutionary pathway is one of division and destruction, and there's also a part of the expansion in that side too. It's like the yin and the yang symbol, with the white chasing the black, the light chasing the darkness, and there's a dot of darkness inside the light, and there's a dot of light inside the darkness still. But speaking specifically to what Claudia was saying and tying it into what Carl Jung says, and when she said allowing it to happen, Carl Jung has a quote where he says, "There's no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." So what we're doing right now in summoning the beast, is giving form to everything that we've denied as part of ourselves, everything that we've shamed and guilt and been afraid of, all of our anger and repressed fears and desire to kill each other. We're pouring these into the machines that we're bringing into the world. Specifically, I'm talking more specifically to the military-industrial complex and the war machine that they're birthing into the world. This is, we were talking about this the other day. This is like an antigen-presenting cell, and we're going to get into the chromosomes deal. But that an antigen-presenting cell in the body absorbs the pathogen, absorbs it into itself, and then digests it, and discerns it, separates it, and displays it on its surface. And then the immune cell, such as a killer T cell, comes and basically takes that pathogen, so it can bring it back to the place where they create more antibodies or more cells to fight that specific type of pathogen. So in a way, allowing it to happen in the development of technology and AI or whatever, in the militarization and weaponization of machines, this is like antigen presentation. We're like displaying all of our pain and fear and shame and ill will towards one another, and putting it, giving them form in the form of the war machine that is the military-industrial complex or whatnot. And there's not one of us who can pretend that we don't have, this a little bit of this element inside of us. Everybody's got some part of their ego that they're not willing to admit or accept as part of themselves. But part of the process of transformation is making the darkness conscious. And you think, you don't want to do that, but that's part of the magic of it, is the light of our own conscious awareness. Exposing it is part of the healing process, just like the antigen presenting cells. There's a connection there, is all I'm suggesting. But
beautiful. So just so.
Are we about to talk about the Akari?
Yes, we're going to go there. Let's go there. Let's go there. Okay.
That's.
Yeah. Come on. Okay. There you go. Next slide, Jeffrey. This is incredible to look at. Can I read just some quotes I took from you? Sure. Before you launch? Okay. So this is, just also this exploration has been going on with Claudia, myself, and Jeffrey for quite a while, in different conversations, sharing information. A lot of the things that we each keep bringing to the consciousness. So I love that, Jeffrey. It's like making the dark conscious, like bringing it to the light. So this is really the act of what we're doing right now. So Jeffrey said to me one day when we were exploring, transhumanism. People start really putting some serious circuitry into their bodies. Eventually, a type of fungus and Akari will start growing inside. Now, this is Morgellons. This is Morgellons,
yeah.
right? It is happening. Yeah, you can go into more of it. Okay. And the fungus that precedes the Akari is the internet and the telecommunication grid. The internet telecom grid is the physical manifestation, the beginnings of a planetary astral fungus. So, yes.
Yeah, the internet fungus deal is a couple of slides in, so this is kind of like a foreshadowing one. But the Akari one is what's interesting. So Andrew Cross, let's see, this is from the Literary Gazette, a weekly journal of literature, science, and the fine arts, and this was published in the 1800s sometime, and it was about, there's an article in there about Akari's research, and it was written by a man who was associated with his research. W.H. Weeks was his name. I'm just going to read a few excerpts just so people can get the general idea of what was going on. It's just a pithy explanation of what Andrew Cross found. So in 1837, Andrew Cross reported to the London Electrical Society concerning the accidental, spontaneous generation of life in the form of Acarus genus insects, while he was conducting experiments on the formation of artificial crystals by means of prolonged exposure to weak electrical currents. Through numerous strict experiments, under a wide variety of conditions, utterly inimical to life as we know it, the insects continued to manifest. In other words, he had solutions of potash that were highly poisonous, toxic, or acidic, and he had boiled them and put them, sealed the jar with mercury, and injected oxygen into the jar that had come from a white hot. He made sure that there were no forms of life, and that the jar was completely sanitized. And these insects still started to grow on the negative end of the galvanic cell that he had set up, of the basically battery that he had set up. Michael Faraday also reported to the Royal Institute that he had replicated the experiment, and W.H. Weeks is another man who had replicated it. So what's interesting is that he also reported the growth of a fungus that preceded the growth of the Akari, when there was a sugar involved, a thin layer of sugar involved, and that is on. I just had it. Okay, here it is. Okay. This one's a book. It's another book from the 1800s, I think. That's called Universality of the Lower Organisms and Their Varieties, and it talks about W.H. Weeks' experiments and Andrew Cross. So Mr. Weeks also describes another experiment in which a thin solution of refined sugar was submitted to continuous electric action. The result was the production of a peculiar fungus different from any previously known, and which only came under the electrical influence. Both this and the insects, it is worthy of remark, always appeared in connection with the negative pole of the battery. This is also from W.H. Weeks. About the beginning of September 1843, a small patch of fungus of a peculiar character was observed to have commenced forming on the outside of the glass near its lower rim. This substance having, when first seen, a gelatinous appearance of dark brown color, by slow degrees extended itself around the lower rim of the glass, forming an irregular band or zone, half an inch in breadth, and throwing out numerous protuberances as it approached the positive side of the arrangement. And then he goes on to describe that he looked at this with a pocket lens, looked at the fungus and saw that it looked like a miniature forest. And then he saw that Akari insects had started forming in the fungus, so that they were somehow that they're connected with the fungus, and that they were like living in the forest of the fungus. So why this is interesting is because I think you have all the ingredients basically of what of Andrew Cross's and W.H. Weeks' experiments on the Earth right now. So we have, and they talk about this too. Let's see. I had this all all set up, and I had opened extra windows, and I lost where it was. I can't seem to find it. But yeah, the idea is that Morgellons is connected with this, but not in the terms of putting electrical circuitry in the body, but more on the terms of that there's thousands of galvanic cell in your own head, in your own body, that there's redox reactions that take place in galvanic batteries are taking place in the body, and that we're constantly submitted to electrical influence in the form of electromagnetic smog and Wi-Fi signals and all this. So the idea is that the Earth itself has its own unique morphogenic field that may be physically connected to the what's that 7 hertz frequency? I just lost it on the Earth.
Oh, the Schumann resonance?
Yeah, the Schumann resonance. That may be physically connected to that, and there may be non-physical aspects with the morphogenetic field or whatnot. But the thing is that this electromagnetic smog, as it's called, that's created by all the Wi-Fi and the basically radiation that we're pumping out into the environment, is blanketing that natural frequency and creating a space for a new type of morphogenetic field, basically. And this could, like the first instances that we're seeing of a fungus growing inside the human. Remember, it said that the fungus needed sugar to grow, and there's plenty of sugar in the body to grow, and it also needs an acidic type environment. Well, our diets right now, they're pretty bad. All the junk food and fast food out there, and the problem with obesity and everything, and acidity and pH is a big issue. Acidic blood and the brain can also have an acidic pH, which is connected with various other things. Anyway, it's interesting because all the ingredients that Andrew Cross used are kind of there almost, but on a dispersed scale right now on the planet. So that would be interesting. Now the transhumanism part, I think, is in a slide further down.
Right. So just with the Acari insects, and I have on the slide, I have archons and Acari insects, right?
Oh, that's, yes.
And the reason, right, okay.
Could I ask something? I'm not familiar with the term Acari. Could you explain the origin and meaning of that term?
Acari is a taxon. It's a branch of arachnids, basically. So they're eight-legged. Yeah, and that's what's even more interesting, is that they're connected with arachnids. So Acari are things like termites. Not termites. I'm sorry. Acari are things like mites and ticks. Those are Acari. So Andrew Cross said that this was a different form, a different variety of Acari that was electrical in nature, that only developed under these conditions that he had set up. Acari is connected to spiders. Basically, they're in the subclass of arachnids. That's the only way that they're connected, and they're also connected with this fungus that was forming. So that's also a point of interest.
Right. So you're making just in this page, many of the themes that you've made throughout our symposium and in this PowerPoint are really embodied in this page, where you start out from the cellular model to the biological model, then up to the internet, and so that this begins to substantiate more political hypotheses, more hypotheses that are more based on political and IT and organizational factors that I've been putting forward, that the internet itself is an AI artifact, and 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 manifestation. So you're really going through the whole cycle of evolution here. Is that the case?
Yeah, actually, and this is talked about in slides further down, is that this particular pathogen that we're dealing with, you talk about the universe being a fractal and as above, so below, and that if we can find the right reference scopes, we can map certain characters to each other, and that reveals a pattern that's being displayed from a higher level to a lower level. And we look at the evolution of a pathogen and the infection sequence and the stages that it goes through. We can map it to planet-wide, what happens with the Acari and the fungus. And there's a non-physical aspect to it too that we're going to discuss. And that the equivalent of the fungus to the Acari is the internet. What the internet is to the Earth as part of as a stage, as a vegetative phase of the infection sequence of this planetary, metapathogen that we're dealing with. And it really gets pretty deep into it too. I don't know how many slides down it is, but it's
well, this begins to get to the deception where the internet is being sold to us as the greatest thing since sliced bread, and that it's the global brain, and without it, and we're entering this great new vista. Whereas in fact, if you apply a different analysis, it's an acceleration of the parasitical takeover of artificial intelligence. Am I missing something here?
No, it's a fungus. And it's interesting because if you look at the pleomorphic theory of germs, Antoine Béchamp and Claude Bernard, they talk about that the terrain is everything, the germ is nothing. Basically, the environment dictates the pathogen, and that it's not necessarily a pathogen that's looking. There's not like hordes of microbes looking to attack and infect people. It's that the terrain, these microbes are benign, more or less, until the terrain changes, in which they mutate in order to metabolize the food that's available in their environment. So, in other words, when the body becomes acidic, for instance, just as a simple example, you'd have microbes mutating into a pathogenic life cycle in order to metabolize the food that's available. And then if it stays like that, they go further down the infection. The mutation sequence, their pathogenic mutation sequence, and start breaking down the body as if the body were dead. So in one of those stages, it goes through a viral stage, and then a bacterial stage, and then there's different types of bacterial stages, and then it enters into a fungal stage where there's mycelium. And right now we're in the fungal stage. The mycelium is the internet, and mycelium is basically made up of hypha, which is on another slide I think soon. But you can map all this stuff pretty closely.
Right, and what's the stage after the mycelium stage?
Well, they start forming sporocarps. So they start forming sporocarps, where a sporocarp basically means seed body. So they start getting ready to release their spores, more or less. So this would be the stage of when the virus is ready to lyse the cell. Either it'll lyse the cell or it'll sneak out of the cell. But after it's done replicating, it needs to.
Very, very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Before I move on to the next slide, because we're going to we have a slide about Gnostics and Gnosticism, and some of the correlating thing is like all of the different sciences, from biology to exopolitics to geology, anthropology. Everything's telling us a story. And part of doing this right now is trying to find that pattern of what is the story really saying. And I just want to bring into one aspect here that's a hypothesis, although John Lash put it forward, is that when Sophia, the Aeon Sophia, came out of Galactic Center and formed herself in the body of Gaia, there was an electrical discharge, an enormous electrical discharge. And we can understand that if we think of celestial bodies moving through time and space, the friction that they they discharge as they're doing something. So saying that she, or Sophia, or Gaia, we can call her, incarnated into the physical earth body, there was this immense discharge. And what he proposes or says is that it provoked, that's when the archons took form. It was almost as an accident, or it wasn't planned on. And so I'm just bringing that into electrical discharges and the formations of these different types of life forms. And when he did say that, he's making a correlation that this archonic entity, right, that it was made from this great electrical discharge, that it is the invasive species on the planet. And that he says that it came in through, it's a mind parasite to begin with, and it came in through the ear canal and started a fungal growth within the brain cavity, as it were. And that's how it started taking over the human consciousness and the worship of itself, and a lot of things that we might talk about a little bit. Just wanted to bring those two pieces together since they're both on this slide. So also recommending for people that they go to John Lash's, I think it's called Meta History, and look at his chapters on the Gnostics. And he's not the only scholar researcher out there with an interpretation, but it's a valuable one.